Hello and welcome everyone. It's a pleasure to see all of you here today for the 35th episode of Tech Tuesdays UK. I'm Subhasha Ghosh and I'm the founder of Tech Tuesdays UK. First and foremost, a big thanks to Google Cloud for graciously hosting us this evening and to SCL Tech or SCL Technologies for the generous support in making this event possible. Before I start, some essential notes on housekeeping. The washrooms are just out there. You've got to step out of the main door and on your right. In case of emergency, God forbid, please walk out of the door on your left. Mobile phones at all times during the session should be kept on silent mode. Once again, this is a secured area. You are not expected to be adventurous or explorative. Just take where you are. We are absolutely delighted to have you join us for yet another engaging session in our monthly knowledge sharing series. To those who are attending this for the very first time, a very warm welcome. You're now part of a vibrant, growing community where ideas are exchanged freely and innovation is sparked through open and honest dialogue. Tech Tuesdays UK takes place on the first Tuesday of every month, where we spend over 90 minutes engaging in deep, unscripted conversations around technology. What makes us truly unique is our free flow format. We don't have any prepared speeches, no preset questions. Just authentic, thought-provoking discussions among peers. We're still in our startup phase, and as we grow, we truly rely on your support. If today's session resonates with you, please help us amplify our message. Talk about us, share about us, and repost our content on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Our handle is the same across all platforms, that's at Tech Tuesdays UK. As is the tradition, our wonderful team of volunteers will connect with some of you after the session to capture your thoughts and camera. These moments will be featured across our digital platforms. So don't be shy, share your experience. Whether you're a technologist, policymaker, investor, student, or simply someone who is AI curious, we are truly excited to have you amongst us today. So let's challenge assumptions, ask bold questions, and together, let's shape the future of innovation. Now, as you all would be aware, this evening we are organizing the second and the concluding chapter on the topic, India, the next AI and tech capital. To drive today's discussion, we are honored to be joined by an esteemed panel of guests. We have Dr. Param Shah, Group Head, Strategic Communications and Government Relations, Arvind Group, joining us all the way from Ahmedabad, India. Param, you there?
Hi, good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining. We have Dr. Siddharth Khastagir, Professor, WMG, University of Warwick. Siddharth? You can carry your coffee.
No, it's fine, it's fine.
And last but not the least, we have Gautam Hazari, Chief Technology Officer at Secure ID. Gautam, you okay with this? Thank you once again, and let's get started. But before I leave the floor open, I have one small request. As you share your thoughts or make a comment during the session, please do take a moment to introduce yourself, just your name and organization that you work for. It helps all of us to get to know each other a little better and continue building this amazing community together. So welcome once again, and let the conversation begin.
So maybe we can start with an introduction. Maybe Param, if you want to start. I'm sure many knows you already, but yeah, if you can start.
Sure, thanks. Hi everyone, I'm Param Shah. I'm the Group Head for Strategic Communications and Government Relations at Arvind Limited. I spent most of my life working with Chambers of Commerce. Spent close to 18 years of my life spent with Gujarat Chamber of Commerce and Federation of Indian Chambers of Commerce Industry. In the last 8 years, I was pretty much back there in London. But like everyone says, life has its own ways of moving ahead. One phone call, and the next thing I know is I'm now doing a private sector job back in India. My interest in AI is specifically around policy making, ethics, and governance issues. So I've been doing my own bit of research, trying to train myself more about AI. I'm not a technically qualified person, but thought of why not at some point of time you want to reshape your skills or have a new thing in your armor. So that's when I started learning more about AI, and I continue to do so. I think I'll take a pause here and let my other panelists also introduce themselves.
Go for it. Okay, I'll go. So, firstly, thank you again, Subhash, for the invitation. An absolute honor to be here. So, I'm Siddharth Kastagi. I'm a professor at WMG University of Warwick. I lead the research group on safe autonomy, so interested in everything to do with self-driving cars, drones, and autonomous shipping. So, across the three modes of transport. Interest is also a lot on the international standards and policy making regulation side, more from a safety perspective. How can we actually ensure that when we deploy AI in any of our applications, it's done in a safe manner? And what does safe AI safety mean, or what does safe AI mean? So that's the way we do a lot of work, both in the UK, but also at the United Nations and at ISO standards level. And I think we'll unpick quite a few of these threads during the conversation. So, Gautam.
Thanks, Subhash. I'm Gautam Hazare. I'm the co-founder and CTO for Secura ID. Have spent most of my time in telecoms and security and identity. We are talking about AI here. So I'm an AI practitioner. In my work, I use a lot of AI. My first encounter, I think I've said it in one of the previous ones as well. My first encounter with AI was in 1999. And at that time, I think the AI winter was going on, right? So I was trying to do, we were processing a lot of legal documents, and we were trying to see if we can optimize. And we had a army of C++ engineers. They were writing code to extract out information from those legal documents. And I was trying to use AI to automate it. No, I didn't succeed. It failed miserably, right? So I don't know if any of you remember something called Prolog. So I was using Prolog. I was using something called OmniMark, which many have not even heard. So Prolog survived for some time, OmniMark didn't, right? But there were no kind of compute was not there. So I'll not go to failures no one wants to remember, but I do remember it failed, right? But it was worth a try. After that, I have been using various forms of AI and also a bit of not large language model in the NLP before the GPT phenomenon happened or the transformer architecture was there. I was using BERT quite a bit for various purposes. And now we provide a lot of fraud management services, and AI is critical for that. And my colleagues have been working in India with some of the policymakers, with NPCI and also private organization. And AI is extremely interesting and different in India, right? And it's a great topic, so let's talk.
Go for it.
I was just thinking, right, because it's a part 2 of what we were discussing last time, right? And the topic here is India as an AI capital or leader there, right? And we were discussing earlier as well, last time, if you have been there as well. It's a bit tricky, right? Whether India is a leader, can be a leader, is the AI capital or not, because there are a large number of variables in there, right? So in some, it's almost like those equalizers. So some of the frequencies are high, some are low, some are zero, things like that, right? So how do you actually define a leader? How do you define India as the AI capital? So what I was thinking was, Siddharth and Param, that maybe some of the variables we can touch upon. There's a large number of variables. So the way I see that is there are 7 such variables, and I call those 7 M's.
Okay.
Right? And again, there are more, right? These 7 M's are critical. And maybe in some cases I have forced M into that, but I'll come to that, right? So it's model is kind of, non-controversial, has to be. There has to be a model. And when we are saying AI, it's not just large language model. Bear with us on that. So model, then the next one is multimodal data. And I will stress on multimodal data in the context of AI. And we will have a discussion on that, right? So we have some examples on that as well. Why I'm stressing on multimodal data for India, because India is unique. The third one is mathematics. I'm probably forcing M here, but what I mean by mathematics is the algorithms. And again, India is unique for that. We'll come to that. And we'll have a discussion on that, why I say. And the fourth, right? The fourth M is what I call mind. And again, I'm forcing M here. So it's skills, basically, right? And we will have a discussion where it is. The fifth M is obvious, is microprocessor, right? I didn't want to call just GPUs. We were having some discussion in there, right? So let's have that discussion in there, right? And for India, again, there is this uniqueness there as well. How many? We have 5. The sixth one is basically market. When I say market, is the use cases, is not just the commercial market in there. And then the last seventh M is mindful AI, which is not just regulation, it's the ethical aspects that Siddharth, you were talking about. So maybe, and again, there are more, right? I was thinking that we can have some discussion around not all, whatever we can actually pick up, right? Because any discussions that we will have probably will fit in one or more. So, Siddhartha.
So maybe I'll take it from there. It's interesting you highlighted 7. So those who know me and have heard me talk about different topics, like know the fact that I like to do things in multiples of 3. So rather than starting with 7, I'll start with 3. So I actually feel when you talk about any country or organization trying to be a leader in something, there are 3 key things that you need, especially in the terms of AI. So, and they're very much aligned with what your 7 M's are. So that infrastructure, capital, and skills is, I think, the 3 key things that you need and India needs to actually be a leader in AI space. So there are others that you've just mentioned, but I think the top 3 things I would say, infrastructure, capital, and skills, of which, if you think about where is India really good at right now. So skills, absolutely, I would say it's there, it's getting there. The pipeline, both in terms of quality and quantity, is coming. It's the capital and the infrastructure where I think India needs either support or it needs to be a bit, get its elbows out a bit. And I think the government is actually putting a lot of investment in this space. I think capital is something that India has, but it's the infrastructure, the compute infrastructure is which is becoming a key differentiator for any country right now. So if you look at the investment UK is also doing, we have the capital, we have the skills, but we don't have the infrastructure right now. So I think those are the 3 key things I would say, and I think the focus from my perspective needs to be a bit more on the infrastructure side, because access to high performance computing is what you need to actually develop and keep at pace in this space. But Param, I'm sure you've got additional comments on that.
Yeah, I would want to come in, and someone who's worked more closer on the policy side of things and with the government closer. I personally believe, and going back to the point, Gautam, you made about India, whether it's a leader or whether it's not a leader, what position does it hold? India definitely today is at a threshold of something very transformative. You have a Prime Minister who says that India not just offers data and demographics, but also digital trust and innovation capacity, right? Now that's the kind of leadership thought process when it comes to innovation on capacity that India has, and that we could be a world leader as well. So, we are not just preparing for an AI era here back in India, but we are also shaping it in the sense that we realize that what's happening globally on AI is not something that India would be able to consume or would be able to fit in, right? So what we're doing here is we're doing it at scale, we're doing it in an inclusive manner, more responsibility, of course, keeping that in mind, that we would have, and like some of them sitting back there in the room would like to hear this from me, is to deal with the India and the Bharat when it comes to AI, right? I know I'm putting the cat amongst the pigeons by using India and Bharat, but yes, that's the fact. Let's face it, that we are a country which is full of extremities, But what is interesting is that even with all of this, we currently rank uh, globally in the top 5 when it comes to AI research and output, and top 4 when it comes to skill penetration. So that you did mention about skilling. So India is definitely right up there. It has the skills, it has the capabilities, it has the urge for going on to do this. Um, when you did mention about the capital, the government of India has heavily invested into this as well. The India AI mission, which was launched earlier this year, there is 10,000 crores of Indian rupees, which is committed and allocated separately for this. And this is the kind of investment that the government speaking into this. I'm sure the private sector is going to add much more to this, and I'm sure a lot of people sitting in that room who are representing some of the Indian firms there would say, oh, this is not even 1/4 of the budget that we allocated. But for a government to allocate on something which probably 60% of the population does not understand, this is huge, right? So that's where we stand at this point. And we could talk more about the India AI mission and a lot of other things that it is up to. I think I'll take a pause here to to also let you guys come in on this.
Yeah, so maybe expand on few of those, right?
Sure.
And also, India is unique and different, right? This is why we need to treat whatever we talk about in India, whether it's infrastructure or not. And infrastructure, I think, the first thing that comes to mind is you will need more compute,
Yep.
right? There is an assumption behind that. The assumption is you need more compute if you use, for example, the type of architecture that is used for the existing models outside India, right? Are they relevant for India? So, for example, I think you touched upon, I think the language thing as well, right? In India, there are 22 official languages, right? And as part of, there was a survey that was done, it's called PLSI, People's Language Survey of India. There are 780 other languages spoken. They're not dialects, right? There are other languages spoken there, right? So the skill, and then the interesting thing, I'm sure, if you have been in India, you will see. And these languages are not isolated. What does that mean is, even if you are doing, let's say, WhatsApp-based interaction, you will use one word of Hindi, few words of English, and then maybe, other mother tongue. And the response will be probably have other combinations, right? So if you understand the model that needs to understand the context, it's extremely complex, right? Because it's not just understanding the context of one language corpus, it's understanding the combination of all, right? And that's unique. If you just have to do it with one language, let's say just English, it's difficult, but it's still okay, you can manage it. So, that's not just the one uniqueness perspective. So, and then we'll come to the infrastructure, why it needs to be thought differently, right? So one of the things that I wanted to, started to talk about is the models, for example, right? So again, generative AI is not LLM, right? LLM is one part of generative AI, but that's the most popular discussion. So let's start there, I would say, right? So all the models that are being, for example, imported in India, they cannot scale, right? Because that's like doing AI for India, but then not in India, right? And why it doesn't scale is, this complex in context, as we talked about, because the way the discussions happen. And also it is unfair. Why I say it's unfair is, for example, for a, let's say, a language model, right? The way the commercials work is, the unit is tokens, right? So in English, one word is around 1.3 tokens. Just Google it to check that how many tokens are used by the tokenizers for any of the popular models. I mean, if you use their tokenizers, and then basically see it in various Indian languages, right? So, for example, for I think you can name them, GPT-4o, right? If you compare with English, Hindi is around 2 times the token. It's exactly same information, right? But the number of tokens is 2 times. If you use, we're here in Google, so Gemini, the number of tokens is 3 times for Hindi and Tamil and few of the others, right? So that way, because the cost is per token, in that case, the cost increases, right? Is that, I mean, and again, no one wants to do it, but that's the reality right now, right? Is that the only way to handle it? Because we cannot really start to talk about other units, right? Token has to be the unit. But is there any other way to handle the uniqueness of India? The answer is yes. There are, all you need to do is go to, I think, the third M I was talking about, which is mathematics, the algorithms. Start to zoom into the algorithms of, for example, tokenization, right? So, and there has been some very interesting work happening. So, India AI mission, Param talked about. So, India AI mission is promoting these things because so that, AI gets created for India in India, right? So, there is a tokenizer from, Ola, right? So, Ola created an AI organization called Chapter2. So they have their own tokenizer, right? And then that's much, much more optimized for Indian languages. The most, popular, or not, sorry, popular is not the right word. The most optimized tokenizer I found when trying it out is called Xxtra. And there is a paper in arXiv, you can check. It has done the performance analysis across, all the major tokenizers, including from, the GPT and from other models. That's the most optimized one. The reason is because language is extremely unique, right? Language has got lots of complexities, which complexities are related to the culture. So in that case, if you use that to create the algorithm and the architecture, in that case, that will be more optimized. For example, let's take an English word, unbelievable, right? The way you will tokenize is unbelievable. You pick any Indian language. Do we have those sort of relationship in a word? Maybe not, maybe yes for some, right? So those, let's say, uniqueness, those complexities needs to be considered to create the algorithms purely for tokenization. And there are a lot many other things. It doesn't have to be just tokenization, right? Then we may not need huge amount of compute. We may need some compute, but may not need huge amount of compute.
So I fully agree with what you're saying. I think the underlying principle of what you're trying to say is what we're doing in the West doesn't one-to-one translate to India. And I think I fully agree with that. I think in the AI world, it's true both not only for models, but also for data.
Absolutely.
So it both for data and models. So it's very interesting you talk about the models because I was just, I'm going through some recruitment process. I was recruiting for a postdoc in my group, and I was looking for a AI safety person, and this guy, during the interview process, and I was like, what would be the next research question that you would like to work on when you join, if you are successful? And this guy mentioned to me, I'm done with this whole hype of large language models. I want to actually create a small language model because I want to look at how we can actually look at the algorithms in a different way. And if you do it from a small language model perspective, whatever that means, you require less infrastructure, you require less compute, and so on and so forth. So I think, going back to your point, it's about trying to I won't say reinvent, but re-look at the question that you're trying to solve, rather than applying a solution that we have to a question that we're trying to solve. So it's very important to look at the question and what does that question actually need from a problem space perspective. So if you look at you're looking at the number of language questions that you are asking. Large language models, in a way, is perfect for doing that. But is it the optimum way of doing it? That's the question that we are trying to answer. So from a very different viewpoint, we are taking a very narrow view of AI also. So AI has multiple use cases, and language processing for India is only one of those use cases. So I work in a space which is AI used in safety critical applications. So self-driving cars, drones, where AI is actually making your decisions. And one of the key aspects when it comes to India in this space is the data, the training data that goes into the models itself. So we are all not naive in saying that India will have self-driving cars, but we are absolutely realistic in saying India will have driver assistance systems. And most of the OEMs that you see, the Tatas, the Mahindras of the world, are having driver assistance systems in their vehicles. And all these systems have a bit of AI from a perception aspect. And from when you're trying to deploy that in India, then your other M comes in, is the data that you use for training. And how do you actually localize that data in a way that it's scalable? So we doing quite a bit of work in this space also with partners in India, and in taking an ontological approach towards data itself. So how can you actually build an ontology that actually works for India, encompassing all the different diversities that you have when you are operating? And this concept of ontology is very interesting. It works very nicely for in the driving domain, but it works very nicely for any domain. So essentially what we're trying to say is, when you're trying to deploy an AI system for any use case, what is the operating conditions in which that you are going to deploy, and that essentially is dictating your ontology. So rather than taking an ontology developed in the West, India needs to, and we need to focus on ontologies very specific to India. So for example, from a driving domain perspective, the kind of roads we have in India, the kind of actors we get on Indian roads, the behaviors they respond, that actually goes into their ontology, that goes into the creation of the training data. So again, it's the important thing for India is the scale offers a huge opportunity for commercialization and profitability, but at the same time, the solutions need to have a very localized approach. We cannot take the approaches that we've taken in models and data in the West and just transport it 1:1 in India. I'll stop there and Param.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So, a lot of thoughts that run through my mind, but I think I'll go one by one. To start off with, I get reminded of a quote that I heard at an event where the former IT Minister of India, Rajiv Chandrasekhar, was addressing, and this was in London. And he said that, India will not just be a consumer of AI. We would be producers of responsible, inclusive AI that reflects our values. And why did I bring this up? Because I think this resonates to what we've been discussing about India wanting to build its own AI, which would be inclusive. For me, what's interesting here is inclusive, because going back to my previous point of Bharat and India, and the languages that Bharat did mention about, the variety of languages that we have, it would be something that we would require to look into. But India is not working in isolation. Let's be very clear on this. Like Siddharth said, there are partners. India's AI story is being co-written with the world. So be it the UK, be it other countries like Finland, for example. India has an MOU on covering AI applications, ranging from satellite data, remote sensing, 5G, robotics, and so on, with France, with US, and more and more so forth. So what India is doing is trying to get the best possible solutions or models which are working in a more diverse background, look at them and try to Indianize them, if I may use the word. Since you mentioned languages, I thought I'll bring in a use case here. I don't know how many of you have heard the Indian Prime Minister speak in the last few years. He ensures that he only speaks in Hindi, irrespective of where he is speaking, right? And I'm sure a lot of you watch BBC, and BBC does report India, and specifically two things currently. One is the language war going on in India. The other is the unfortunate air crash that happened in the city where I'm sitting. But why did I bring up languages? When the Prime Minister is speaking in Hindi, how does someone who is so staunchly married to his language sitting in some part of the country understand it? The government of India has come up with an app which is the National AI language stack called Bhashini. What it does is it has the power of real-time translation into 22 Indian languages simultaneously. This is done during PM speeches, budget announcements, and many other such occasions. It's also now been embedded into a lot of citizen apps and chatbots and ONDC, which at some point we might bring into discussion about the digital public infrastructure as well. So what India is doing is they are trying to build its own AI models, which can be then embedded upon existing models to ensure that the language issue that we did start off with gets addressed in the best possible manner. So, like I said, we are we know our problems. We probably understand this much ahead of time that these things when they come to India, like so that you did mention about self-driving cars. Interestingly, we're talking on a day when Tesla launched in India.
Yes, that's
Right?
true.
Today is when Tesla launched in India in Mumbai,
Yeah.
and believe me, at the office, when I was in my office watching it on the screen in my room, a few of my colleagues walked in and they started, "This is not going to work," right? Now, how do you break this perception that the Indian mindset has that, oh, this is a Western thing, can't work in India? And then, of course, they go as far back as McDonald's having a hard time in India, and then they had to reinvent themselves. Now, why did I bring up this? What I'm trying to come to is that, businesses internationally have now understood that India is not a one-size-fits-all model. It's not a market where you could take a ready-made product and just let it come in. You will have to work on it. You will have to ensure that you get relevant data from India, ensure that you work on that data and get those data models to work on your artificial intelligence products or apps that you come up with. So that you rightly said, that when it comes to self-driving cars, India is completely a different market. I tell you a very interesting thing, what happens to me every day. I go from, the middle of the city to the furthest end of the city. And I bypass the oldest part of the city as well. My driver, who's trained to drive a traditional car, is now driving a car which is having large range of sensors and also has some bit of AI technology built in. Now, my car gets confused between my driving style and my driver's driving style, right? And invariably, in my, about 10-mile drive from where I am to my office, my car invariably just stops in the middle of the road, sensing danger because there's someone just walking past, right? Now, why did I bring this up? So that I wanted to, poke you a bit as to how do you deal with these issues, that you got a cow run onto the road, you got a dog run onto the road, you got a cyclist who decides, oh, I want to take a right turn without, and then of course, a lot of cities in India are known for the auto rickshaw drivers to just put out their legs and say, okay, by the way, that's my signal to say that I'm going to take a right turn or a left turn, right? How do you deal with these? How do AI models deal with these? Is an interesting conversation, especially from your point of view, because you deal with self-driving vehicles or self-autonomous vehicles as well.
So maybe I'll take that and then broaden that question. Thank you so much for bringing that. And I think I completely forgot Tesla launched in India today, and it's quite quite coincidental. So I think it goes back to rightly answer your question. It goes back to the training data itself. So the kind of training that we use to train the models when we're trying to deploy in London or in the Bay Area is very, very different from the training data we use or we should use when we're deploying in different cities in India, be it tier 1 or tier 2 cities. And almost every manufacturer and developer of these systems has come to that conclusion. So you cannot just transport your model from one place to the other without actually retraining the data based on data that is relevant to India. And it's not just about the actors, it's also the behavior. So the unpredictability of pedestrians or unpredictability of tuk-tuk drivers in India is something that we need to cater to. The world will not change. So you cannot expect the car to ask for, oh, I can only work if everybody follows the rules. That's not a product that people are going to use. So the product has to cater to the local requirements. So I think fully agree with on what Param you're saying, and that's what something the ecosystem is actually catering to. But that actually brings to a much broader question, and which I think India has a huge power of. The scale of opportunity for anybody coming to India actually forces them to customize for India. And I think we should not underestimate the power of the scale of opportunity that India offers. So the fact that KFC comes to India and starts offering vegetarian burgers was unheard of 10, 15 years back. But they have to do it because a vast population of India is vegetarian and they want to tap into that market. They have a brand that people associate with themselves, and that is what happens. So I think that's something that we should absolutely leverage as India, is the scale of opportunity will force people to actually customize. We just need to enable them to have a level of predictability in the legislation, standards, policy making, and provide the infrastructure that they need. Rest, I think they will be very open, and they are open. And we're sitting in Google, who have offices in India, and they have customized to the local needs in India also.
So I'll because you started to talk about, let's say, local elements of data, right? Training data. I'll expand on that, and sorry, I'll come back to language again as a data, right? The reason is what Param you touched upon, is this digital inclusion, financial inclusion, all sorts of inclusion is linked to language, especially in India, right? And the reason is, again, not just that there are so many languages spoken. So in India, for example, 77% of the population can read and write, right? And the rest, which is around 330 million, almost the size of US, right? Many times UK population. They can't read and write, but they're extremely skilled. They're contributing to the GDP. For example, India is an agriculture-heavy country, right? So 46% of the population are employed in the agriculture industry. This is the Economic Survey of India 2023-24, right? If you go back, for example, the 2017-2018 data I was checking, you expect that to be higher, right? But 2017-2018 data for Economic Survey of India, if you check, that was actually 44%. So it's actually more people are getting linked to agriculture, right? And many of the people who really can't read and write, they're in that sector. But they're extremely skilled and they're contributing to the economy, right? So what do? They can actually speak, they can listen to. And that then comes into this inclusivity and also the data set, because majority of the data sets that we have from, let's say, outside, they're textual data. So the knowledge that, that, let's say, these 330 million individuals in India have, their knowledge cannot be encoded in textual language, right? There has to be catered for that. And then why I'm saying that these things, right? Some of the, let's say, anecdotes for that is, for example, in India, you will hear in the news, oh, e-commerce is massive, everyone is buying and selling. If you go to the data, right? E-commerce penetration in India is only 18%, right? And by the way, 63% of all e-commerce in India is owned by 2 companies. I'll not name them, but none of them are Indians. Anyways, why I'm saying that is, why is, after the digital revolution, the lowest, it's not the lowest, the second largest mobile data rate in the world, right? So in India, average mobile data costs around $0.09, right? In UK, I think it costs around $0.6. The average in the world is around 2.6. Anyways, so you have all the, let's say, infrastructure there, but why hasn't it happened, right? More than 80%. You expect at least 60 to 70%. It's language. Because majority, and it's not just from the buyer, it's from the seller's perspective as well, right? A small farmer in some remote village in Karnataka, are they selling in these e-commerce platforms? Are they selling in Amazon or Flipkart? No. Are the buyers there buying in there? No. That's why we have this gap. Why? Again, language. Because majority of these platforms are in English. So I think from 2017 or 2018, let's say Amazon started to introduce Hindi and English. But there are 22 official languages, 780 other languages. They're not included in this ecosystem. So let's not just talk about private sector. UPI is massive, right? UPI is the largest fintech on earth. So 46% of all, let's say, instant payment globally happens through UPI. So just last month, there were $290 billion of transactions happened through the UPI platform, right? Okay, it's great. What's the penetration of UPI? The active number of users last month was 500 million, which is around 30% of the population. So why hasn't it happened? So UPI was launched in 2016. Again, language. Because UPI, all the UPI apps are using English, right? So language is a barrier, has been a barrier. And now, that has been accepted. And as, Param was talking about, from the government, there are lots of initiatives happening in an innovative way, right? So Param touched upon Bhashini. I think the interesting thing is the data sets were not there. Indian language data sets were not there. And uniquely, those data sets cannot be text. They have to be, in audio, in a kind of something that you can speak and listen to. So that needs to be catered for models as well. So models, local data sets, and algorithms, they all need to cater for that. And that's exactly what is happening. For example, Bhashini. Bhashini is Bhasha Interface for India. That's a sub-ministry of MITI. MITI is Ministry of Electronics and IT, right? So they created almost a sub-ministry in India for Bhashini. And the way they captured this data is, I would say, unique, right? So they created the app that Param was talking about. They used a concept called Bhasha Dan. Bhasha is language, and Dan is, you donate.
Donation.
Right? Donations, right? So you basically donate. It's a crowdsourced, but the way they did that is that way, right? And there were 4 apps. Suno India. Suno is listen. Bolo India. Bolo is you speak. Padho India, which is you read, and Likho India, which is you write. So there were 4, let's say, different flavors of the app. So anyone can, start to feel good that, oh, I want to do Bhashadan. I want to donate language, right? So, for example, I speak 2 languages. I speak Hindi, I speak Bengali, right? So I can say that, oh, I will contribute, or I will do Bhashadan, and I will basically use the Suno India thing, right? So which means I listen to. So I will listen to either in Hindi or Bengali, and then I will speak back the same, let's say, word or sentence in the other language. So that's how they captured all these, let's say, data sets, right? Which is unique to basically India. You don't need to do it anywhere else, right? Because otherwise, this localized data will not exist in any of the country. The other important thing is model as well, because that's critical, right? All the models that we generally use here are textual models, right? So in India, there is a model called BharatJain. BharatJain is an organization, actually, is a private-public arrangement. And there is a model, and it's very interesting. It's called e-Vikray. So Vikray means selling, right? And then they have done a spin there. So the Vikray, the last 2 words are AI, capital AI, right? So e-Vikray. That model has nothing to do with text. That model is a visual model, right? So for example, the thing that I was talking about, that small farmer in some part of, let's say, Telangana, they cannot participate because they have, let's say, they have grown some, I don't know, some vegetables, but they want to sell. But how do they sell? They don't know how to, create an inventory page in English. So this model, what it does is, this model basically can annotate any image. So basically what this farmer needs to do is just take a picture of the image, and then this model will then create an inventory page for that. Now, this small farmer can start to participate in the e-commerce business. And that's an objective from the AI for India mission as well, to go to at least 25% from 18% penetration by the end of this year. I don't know they will achieve that or not. But those type of initiatives from the private sector, from the government, and across the technology layer, from local data to model to algorithms, need to be there, and that's happening.
So maybe it might be time to actually open up for some questions. We've talked a lot about languages. We've talked a bit about data also. Maybe anybody from the audience has any questions for any of us? Maybe microphones are coming up.
Hello. Hi, my name is Mithun Banerjee. I'm from TCS. I think one question I would like to ask is, while we are thinking about a lot of things, which is great, what about the sovereignty of the data? So currently, there are two things here. One is, we are looking at, we're talking about infrastructure which needs to be augmented, but still we are renters in this world where we are using the AWS or Google Cloud platform. So there needs to be, democratization of GPUs, I would say, microprocessors, because if you look at the whole ecosystem of startups, I know we spoke about AI Kosh last time, but if you're looking into providing compute at a low cost to take care of this this booming AI piece, do you think we are doing enough in this area?
If I may?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
Param
please.
would be a good. Go for it, Param.
So basically, the AI, the AI for India is basically going to be built on three pillars. One is the sovereign capabilities. So I'm going to answer to one of your parts of the question. The other is how do you democratize access? And the third pillar is how do you make it responsible? How do you make responsible regulation? So Gautam did mention about BharatGen. So with projects like BharatGen, India is building multimodal, multilingual foundational model tailored for our population. An AI doctor speaking Marathi, or a farmer being assisted in Bhojpuri, or even an e-commerce agent in Tamil. What we're trying to do is build our own tools here, right? And that's what BharatGen and such projects are going to do that for us. What you did mention about the AI Kosh, so through AI Kosh or the GPU pool or the open source platforms like AI for Bharat, we have tons of these startups now coming out of tier 2, tier 3 cities now. They now have access to tools, that those probably someone sitting in Bangalore or even Boston has. So we're trying to democratize it as well. And third is how do we make it innovation responsible. So India's AI Safety Institute, and I would want to talk a bit about it a bit later, but I'm going to touch upon it for this to be, for the panel to take it up, because the AI Safety Institute is shaping standards on explainability, fairness, risk mitigation, not just for India, but also for the global South. So if I have to put this in a nutshell, we are not just building the AI for the elite. We're building the AI for Bharat, for the farmers, for the nurses, for the teachers, for the Kirana store owners as well. So this is where India is heading to. Gautam, Siddharth, if you want to add on to this?
I'll add on to that, right? Because you had two parts of the question. One is the sovereignty of the data. Basically, how do we actually protect our data privacy, etc. That's what you're saying, right? The second part was of compute, right? So the way India has so far done many of the, let's say, innovation and at societal scale is through this DPI stack, or India stack through the DPI thing, right? And then for DPI, there are actually both the answer for both the questions are in there. I'll come to that. So for the DPI, or as part of the India stack, there are three layers, right? Identity, data, and payment, right? Data is critical there. So there is no product available for data. For identity, it's Aadhaar. For payments, it's UPI, right? And also ONDC right now. ONDC is the One Network for Digital Commerce. But for data, is an horizontal layer there, and then the sovereignty of data, and it's not just for, let's say, identity or for payments or for digital commerce with ONDC. There's something called Open Energy Interface, right? That's coming up as well. So it's to create that data sovereignty layer, right? So as part of that, there is something called DEPA architecture, they call it, right? DEPA is digital empowerment and protection architecture, right? It actually defines, not just defines, because the way India has done the regulations is a more techno-regulatory approach. What does that mean is not just create a regulation, like in, for example, here in Europe, right? For the banking, we have the PSD2 regulation, we have, let's say, open banking initiatives, but then how will that or who will that implement? It's up to someone else, right? In India, they are all mixed together, right? So UPI is not just providing the, let's say, some sort of regulatory boundaries through NPCI, they're also providing a platform and APIs, right? That's the approach being used for everything, including Aadhaar, right? So now, as part of DEPA, it's a generic architecture being created for data sovereignty, right? And that actually included for training data as well. So how will training data will be protected? How will, privacy, etc., will be checked, etc. So that's an initiative. It's not very mature yet for AI training data, but that's the idea. That's where the thinking is going on, right? Now coming back to compute, because this is extremely important for whatever happens next for AI in the private sector, because as we were discussing earlier, the low mobile data rates in India has actually fueled all the app revolution, right? In India, literally, there is an app for everything. We are working with one of the interesting use cases where there is a marketplace, right? E-commerce marketplace for buying and selling livestock. So you can buy, goat in there. Anyways, I have not seen that use case anywhere else. Anyways, so for AI, or not just using AI for innovating, let's say, private companies, to have its societal impact like what UPI and Aadhaar and ONDC has, you need to have low-cost compute, and they need to be distributed there. So as part of India AI mission, there are a large number of GPUs being procured, but that's not enough, because for a scale of India, it will not be enough, right? But there is an objective of how much that will be costed and how that will be distributed, right? It's not done yet, that's just an objective. It will be distributed through, DPI-like mechanisms, like what happened with, for example, identity distribution or payment distribution. But there is an aspiration of the cost per hour for compute. For India, it's been set as part of India emission, and it's public information, you can Google it. It's 100 rupees per hour. If you know the global rate for that, it's generally $3 per hour for GPU, right? So that basically is the objective. How that will achieved, there are some ideas there, right? The first one is, okay, let's procure. But that will not be scalable. That will be expensive as well. So that's why there is an ambition, again, as part of India AI mission, that in the next 3 to 5 years, there will be homegrown GPUs there. There is also discussions happening is why GPUs? GPUs were an accident, right? GPUs are graphical processing unit. All it has to do with AI. They worked well when, if you know AlexNet, when AlexNet was getting created, it worked well, right? And then everyone jumped in, okay, let's just use that, let's just use that. But you just stop, right? There could be other ways of doing things. So that's something that's happening. And there are a large number of kind of semiconductor plants that's coming in. I think 5 I know they're already coming in there, to basically create that inventory, but more importantly, to provide that through some sort of DPI stack. I don't think that's been defined yet, but at a lower cost, which is 100 rupees per hour, right? Because otherwise, you can build all sorts of technologies, but it will not, succeed. Even if you create algorithms, let's say tokenization algorithms or embedding algorithms, or maybe models, or maybe, let's say localized data sets, which are for India, created in India. But compute you will need. Maybe you will need less compute, but you still need compute, right? So that's what is happening.
I'll keep it very, very brief because I like other questions. So I think one thing it's important, because it's a race also, we cannot just talk about sovereignty and just think about the fact that, oh, we'll only use compute if it's done in India. So I think you need to have a short-term ambition to actually keep at pace, but at the same time have this long-term ambition of actually creating a sovereign capability. And I think with all the investment with the Tata Group, with the semicon world that's going on, I've got faith in that the long-term will happen. But in the nationalistic view of I will only use it if it's based on India, we'll lose the position. So I think it's very important to have a balance on that front. Any other questions?
Hi, so I'm Ayush, I'm an AI student at the University of Manchester. And we talked about three things. One is cost. The other is, of course, how we're considering multiple modalities. And the last is hardware. So I wanted to touch upon all of these three and then eventually lead my question to the self-driving aspect. So when talking about languages, we're considering multiple modalities. We've come up with native models which can handle all of the 22 languages. And we have to do the same with self-driving models as well, because the driving patterns in India, it's not the same as in the West. But then that is, I think, that touches upon the 6 of the 7 M's. And the one M that is left is microprocessors. And in that microprocessor aspect, I would like to broaden that into hardware, because we have 2 types of sensors, and I was talking about that with someone before as well. We have LiDAR and then we have RGB-based cameras. So LiDAR obviously is much more safer because it does not estimate depth. It has the exact knowledge of how far something is. But RGB cameras, we can estimate depth, and that is not as safe. But it helps us make a more accessible device because it's cheaper. So how does India, and I won't say it's the resistance, but it is pretty much an obligation how we are trying to adopt something as like an RGB camera because it's more cheaper and that will make it more accessible. So since we're talking about India being the tech capital or the AI capital, how will India navigate through this? Because it's very difficult for us to adopt something which is not as safe, but it's definitely cheaper and it takes consideration of the other 6 M's.
Okay, I'll start on that. I'll keep it fairly brief. It's very coincidental. Tesla launched today in India, and Tesla is a camera-based system. If you're familiar with the Tesla system, firstly, India is a cost-sensitive market. There's no two ways about that. So India is a cost-sensitive market. So anything you provide has to be pitched at the right price point. Secondly, you cannot and should not compromise on safety. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why we believe in the short term, and I think Honorable Minister Nitin Gadkari has already mentioned that self-driving cars are not going to happen in India for a number of reasons, and not being able to pitch it at the right price point is one of those reasons also. So for self-driving cars to work in India, you need a LiDAR and a camera-based system. You can feel free to quote me and also on that, but that's you will need a combination of the sensor suite. Okay, and you can't pitch it at the right price. So that's not happening. Having said that, because you can still have a camera-based, RGB camera-based system for a driver assistance systems, I won't be surprised if part of the whole Tesla launch today is to gather data in shadow mode from whoever starts owning the fleet of vehicles and start offering a autopilot type of feature on the Tesla vehicles on Indian roads. I won't be surprised for that at all. So I think that is the way I would see the Indian market going. I don't see LiDARs happening in Indian market unless there's a big, I'll never say never also, unless there's a big change in the sensor suite ecosystem where you can manufacture LiDARs at a very, very cheap rate to meet the price point. So the non-compromisable things are the price-sensitive nature of Indian market. If you go to the tier 1 suppliers, manufacturer and tier 1, they bargain at the level of 10p, and a 10p cheaper component with the scale of the vehicles that people have is a huge impact on the bottom line of the company.
Did you have a question?
No. There's one question online as well.
Oh,
would you want to take that?
Anybody talking online?
Yeah, there's a question on the chat. I can pick it up.
Yes, please do, Param. Please do.
Yeah, it says, would be curious to hear the panelists' thoughts on the UK-India collaboration, competition dynamics?
Do you want to start as a former FICCI person?
I would suggest you could go first because you are already working on it, yourself. So why not?
So I think so. I'll take a very near-term view on this one, and also in the context of the recently signed FTA between UK and India. I think from all the conversations I've had, and Param, I know you are much more closer to this than I am. So all the conversations I have, that the current FTA that has been agreed is just the starting point, and it can open a lot of the collaboration opportunities, especially at a research and innovation level. So when we speak to the High Commissioner, that's the approach that they're taking. When we speak to the ministers who come and visit, that's the approach they're taking. The idea, I think, from my perspective, is to identify where we should compete and where we should collaborate. It's very important to identify which areas, because you can't just say we will collaborate on everything, and because India would also like to lead on some things, and they're absolutely within their right to actually say this is the area where we would like to compete and this is the area where we like to collaborate. And I think there are adult conversations to be had between the two countries to identify which ones. So I'll stop there. Before Paran, if you could provide some context around the FTA.
Sure. No, good you brought up the FTA. And, last time I was in London, I had the opportunity to talk to Minister Piyush Goyal. So I actually, took that opportunity to ask him that you announced the FTA, you celebrated the FTA, both in the UK and in India. So when are we signing it now? And what is it that we can expect out of it? And like you rightly said, that one of the points that was made was that this is just the starting point. There's a much more deeper conversation to be had beyond the signing, and especially on the services side and especially on the tech side of things. The UK-India Tech Partnership is actually leading the way when it comes to collaborations here. But if I could be a devil's advocate, I believe UK is a bit behind the curve when it comes to other European countries or the Western countries. So like I mentioned, Finland has an active partnership going, France has an active partnership, US and India, they are building shared innovation hubs and skill exchange on AI, and there are much more going on. So I think UK needs to gear up and gear up fast to partner, and I see a lot of opportunities there as well. We have the Big Innovation Center, which is again a jointly funded, program by various universities in the UK. The leading universities have pulled in money. The private sector has chipped in as well. And there's a lot of research happening on AI there. And Professor Bridget John and her team, Bridget Anderson, I believe. She and her team are doing fabulous work. Again, around innovation and scaling innovation, and for larger food, I think they could probably share that with the Indian counterparts and work on it together. So that's where we are. Further, we want to come in.
I think Nitin had a question from sometime.
Okay. I think we're taking another question. Nitin, do you want?
Mine was actually a follow-up on some of your discussions. And Nitin Dalla, we're a journalist with the Times. So the thing I think got on the self-driving on Tesla, one of the things I think people forget is Tesla is not an automotive company, it's a sensor company. And to your point, Siddharth, the reason for the launch in India is now to collect that data. Mm-hmm. If you look in the US, a big part of their financials is actually insurance, because they sell insurance based on your driving habits, because they're picking up all this data. So I just wanted to make that point, which is it's an opportunity for Tesla now to pick up that data.
Yeah.
The other thing is just on, you're talking about microprocessors and processors. So I was at Qualcomm in San Diego with their automotive division in April. And the thing they were showing us is the simulations they're doing on level 3, level 4 driving scenarios in India, and actual real physical simulations. So my sort of question to you is, will India develop its own, or will they rely on something like Qualcomm Snapdragon Ride, which is tailored for that. Because what they said was 90% of the data collection they do for a global stack, and then 10% of the data is then picked up from local scenarios, and they do this in 60 countries. And so then the question, so then they're providing a lot of the 90% of that localization through that 10% of data. So I think, is there an opportunity for India? You mentioned there are 5 semiconductor companies in India. Is there an opportunity for that to happen there, or are we going to be relying in India on these big global majors to provide that? Given that, for example, in IoT and the sensors, I mean, we tried to sell sensors for cold chain distribution in India maybe about 10 years ago, and even at €2 a sensor, it was still too expensive for the Indian market. And these are big organizations. Last point I think I was going to make, 2 or 3 weeks ago in San Francisco, Microsoft demonstrated with Synopsys and a couple of other companies their agentic AI system for designing a chip. So what happens is these agents, AI agents, are collaborating with each other to design the major part of the chip. So the question then is there an opportunity for India in agentic AI, given that it's going to replace engineers, and even the big companies like NVIDIA, Cadence, Synopsys, all these, they don't know at the moment how they're going to price agentic AI, whether it's going to be priced at $100,000 a year for one agent, or what, because they're still experimenting on the value of that. So there's quite a few things in there, but I thought, what are the opportunities for India there?
Whew. There's, I think, a whole session just answering your questions. So I'll take one of them, and then I'll open up to Param and Gautam. So I think on the Qualcomm one, I'll start off on that one. I'll take a short-term and a slightly medium to long-term viewpoint. So I have seen now there are a couple of Indian startups who are focusing on self-driving stack build based in India. So there's a company called Swayam Robots coming out of IIT Kanpur, a spin-off of IIT Kanpur. There's another Roshi.ai. There's a former person, a lead from TCS, who's building his own stack and then licensing it off. So there are some players out there. But to be very precise in the short term, I don't see us having in India, and I say us because I'm still an Indian national, us having a homegrown chip manufacturer who can provide the level at which we need in the short term. Having said that, medium to long term, it's also given the fact that Tata Sons have invested in a whole semicon manufacturing, given the fact a group company is Tata Motors, given the fact that ADAS and is going to be a big thing, I won't be surprised that as one of the things that the Tata Sons investment in the semicon is to actually feed in to the whole requirements from Tata Motors. If you look at whatever, some of the comments that Mr. Chandrasekharan has made is one Tata as one Tata Group company feeding into another Tata Group company. So I would absolutely not be surprised, and I would actually hope that the whole semicon investment for the Tata Sons is actually to feed some of the work into Tata Motors' requirement in the chipset.
I'll touch upon the agentic AI thing that you brought in, right? So what you were asking was like, that Microsoft demonstration on using agents to kind of design chips, right? Is this something relevant for India? Definitely. Is this relevant now? Probably not, right? Because the stage is different, and also in India, the problems are different, right? The problems that for example, that needs to be solved for this entire, let's say, set of 7 M's that I was talking about are different. At some point, definitely, because you will need agents to design whatever form of, let's say, microprocessors and chips for optimization, right? Before that, you need to have those, let's say, microprocessors and semiconductors industry to be mature. That's not there yet, right? There are only 5, I remember. Maybe there are more, right? So yes, that will happen, not now. Having said that, agents are used in many of the other areas for solving problems, right? Because that's a problem solver. And that's not for automation, because there is no shortage of manpower in India, so you don't need that. That's not a problem that you need to solve for India right now. But that's used for optimization and various other areas as well. For example, so 17% of the GDP for India is related to agriculture, right? And there is a lot of problem there. There is a lot of kind of old school mechanism that's used there, right? So there are many startups coming up to use agents to solve some of the problems, right? And they're doing it in end-to-end. For example, they're creating the models. There's a lot of open source data now available as part of AI Coach that we talked about, right? So as part of India mission, and that's an interesting approach, right? For example, if you're working in the AI industry, there are 3 different, let's say, places that you will go for various parts of AI, right? So you need some sort of symbolic code. You can call it whatever, symbolic AI, new symbolic AI, right? You will need some sort of models to use. You will need some sort of data. And if you're working, let's say in the open source world, you will go to 3 different places. You will go to GitHub for all the, let's say, symbolic stuff. You will go to Hugging Face for the models, and you will go to, for example, Kaggle for the things, right? What AI Coach has started to do is, he said, these are all linked, right? Why do we need to separate it out? So AI Coach is providing all of those, including the the data sets for example for the agricultural purpose and satellite data as well. And there are startups then coming up who are using open source model from AI Coach, and then using some agents to solve that. So one of the model, if I remember correctly, it's called Kisan something, Kisan E something. I'm not can't really recollect that, but the way they are doing that is it's using a model called Dhenu. I think Dhenu means cow, probably. If someone said, yeah. So it's using a model which is basically for the agriculture domain, right? And then there are multiple kind of agents in there. One of the agent is, all it does is, and again, here the uniqueness of India comes in, right? Because many of the farmers, they can't type it, they can't, in Google as well, it's tricky for them to type. So all they do is just, for example, if there is a pest in some sort of field, they'll take a picture of that, and then there's an agent. So they don't need to even upload, right? So the agent is asking in their native language, hey, whatever is that language, take a picture of that. Then it basically uses those Dhenu model or whatever, and then provides information so that they can actually do stuff and then deliver them as well, right? So that's the problem that needs to be solved. That's the problem that in India they're using for agents. And then at some point, I'm sure agents will be used to design microprocessor. But I don't think that's the time has arrived yet.
Great question from you, Stephen.
There's one more comment online.
Okay.
I'm going to take that up.
Go for it.
Yeah, I was just going to give voice to it.
Yeah, go on. You could ask it. Since you're there, why don't you ask yourself?
Yeah, no. So yeah, good to meet y'all. Daniel Shore from GoLLM. We automate feedback to insights. Startup based here in Edinburgh, but a global team with a number of our teammates actually based in India. And so yeah, it was very interesting. I appreciate everyone sharing a variety of examples, and I was just curious to hear other projects or startups, initiatives that you guys are seeing, perhaps related to the area that we're working in, but doesn't need to be. So kind of at that intersection of business intelligence, understanding, insights from customer data and that sort of thing. I'd just be curious to hear.
Sure. So I could share some of these which are being used by the government themselves. So for example, I don't know how much you know about the Indian Railways, but they're one of the largest rail networks in the world right now, right? Now they are using idle train profile. What does this mean? What they're doing is the Indian Railways is using an AI model to optimize allocation of berths across 200 plus trains using the predictive modeling of the AI that they have. The idea is they have tons of data about passenger travel on a particular train over the years. They're using it to create predictive models and then allocate seats, thereby ensuring that there are no empty seats. They're not people waiting for tickets, and on the other end there are empty berths, so they're reducing this gap, for example. That's one. Or for example, in Haryana, that's the northern part of the country, they're using AI dashboard. What is it doing? It is using satellite imagery to detect illegal forest encroachment in the state. And what it is also doing is giving them actionable alerts, which could be executed immediately as well. Or for example, India, like we said, it's a land of variety. So we do have large forests with wildlife in it, closer to cities as well. Now, this brings up a major problem in a place called Tadoba in Maharashtra, where there are a lot of, man-animal conflicts that occur. So what they're doing is they're using AI-powered cameras to help predict the movement of animals as well. This is helping to reduce drastically the man-animal conflicts that are going on. Or for example, in states like Odisha and Andhra Pradesh, which relatively have a larger rural populace, there are self-help group workers who use AI-powered health kits, or for example, use drone mosquito monitors, breeding monitors, which help prevent disease outbreak. So on the preventive side of things. So these are just some examples that I could put across from a large-scale implementation point of view that the governments, including I think in the private sector, my fellow panelists will be able to tell you. But what I'm trying to tell you is that India is implementing large-scale models, and these are not just pilots or proof of concept. They are live deployments showing that AI is now, a pillar of governance in India.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Sure.
There are a few more questions in the room, maybe.
As we discussed earlier, as only 60% of Indian population is more aware of the technology. Two questions. One is that is India ready for the AI implementation, and how this is going to be a blockage for India to become a leader in AI? On the other hand, if we consider Western companies, or for example, we say Tesla, will Tesla or is Tesla interested to change their models according to the driving habits of Indian population? So is it worth for them to invest so much financially, or I would say in research, and change their model? Is India ready to have robots serving in restaurants? So how is all these going to affect India in becoming a leader in AI?
Okay. I'll take a quick dab, and then I'll give it to my panelists to answer the harder question. So I think there's a big part that we haven't discussed actually is around AI literacy and the need for AI literacy in the population for it to be accepted. So we do a lot of work in the UK on the self-driving side, and not just on the engineering side, but also on communicating safety to the average public. How do you communicate this concept of safety to an average public who wants everything to be 100% safe? When we, as engineers, we know nothing is actually 100% safe. But you cannot say that to somebody on the street saying, "I'm giving this technology, but I know it's not 100% safe. Please use it though." So how do you communicate that? So, and a big part of that from an AI perspective, especially in India, where you've got a population who, a section of the population who I would say is early adopters, so they don't really mind, they will just adopt it. But a big section of the population will be hesitant, and they will be losing out if we don't do a piece of work on making them AI literate. And I think it was at IGF, when somebody said in the conversations that a big part of the government focus is actually to make the population more AI literate so that they can actually accept. So that's the first point. Not every use case for AI is relevant for India. So let's not just badge AI for everything that is possible. A robot serving in in restaurants, I don't think that's a use case that India needs. Yes, you might go to a Taj or you might go to a Le Meridien and you might get that, but I don't think Taj ethos will allow that to happen anyways. But so that's not a use case that India needs. But having said that, on the Tesla use case that you mentioned, so knowing the fact that they actually go down the end-to-end machine learning route, yes, they will have to. They cannot deploy if they don't customize it to a local area. And the whole point for them to actually go down the end-to-end route is actually to make it scalable. And all they need is data. And I believe, and Nitin has confirmed, and his sources are much more stronger than my sources on this topic, that they will be collecting data in shadow mode, and one fine day, a switch of a flick, over the upgrade, and you'll have the feature available once they have enough training data. So I think without localizing, nobody can actually deploy. But over to you.
Yeah, I'll touch upon your awareness part, right? Is India ready for that? So I think we need to split into two ways, right? Awareness of the technology and the skills, right? Because they are separate. Majority of the users doesn't need to be aware of that technology, right? So in India, and here as well. So let's say in India, right? 1.1 billion mobile subscribers are there. Are they aware of how this technology works? They don't care, they shouldn't. And then I sometimes, or many of the times, I quote Steve Jobs about technology. So what he said was, technology should either be beautiful or it should be invisible, right? Any technology to be, kind of popular and effective, it has to be invisible, which means you don't need to care about it. It should work for you, right? That's the awareness thing. So for AI as a technology to succeed, and these type of discussions always happen when a new technology arrives, right? And then we'll forget about it. When I have worked, all my life in mobile technologies, when, it was a start of 2.5G GPRS, right? We were discussing, but no one is aware of that. And now we don't even care. Why anyone needs to be aware of that, right? But the second part is skills. So that's something that we didn't talk about. I know, Param, you wanted to touch upon that as well. That's the fourth M in my 7, it's mind, right? So let's discuss some numbers there, right? So India, and this was discussed during G20 summit as well, and there's a Stanford report on what is known as the AI skills penetration index. I personally don't agree to the framework because it's based on LinkedIn data, right? You can be anyone in LinkedIn, not anyone, but anyways. So as part of that, but then it's fair, right? Because it's across all. So as part of that report, and you can check it in Stanford, India has got an index of 2.8, which is the highest, right? UK is 1.7, I believe, right? So it's the highest from skills penetration, but that's LinkedIn data. But then there is some other hard data. So for example, in GitHub, they actually publish the contribution from, let's say, AI engineers, right? So India is second. First is US. So around 22.9% of the entire, let's say, AI-related symbolic code is from US. Second is India, 19%. So there is skill there, right? If you compare that with, let's say, UK, if you combine EU and UK, that is 17.1%. So AI skills are there, has to be there, right? Because,
we have the population.
Yeah, and then not just that, it's a survival thing. Majority of the tech guys are software engineers, right? So they have to. So yes, skills are there. Population is not aware, don't have to be. They don't, it's better they're not aware. That's what Param.
If I may lighten this a bit. For the record, there are restaurants in the city where I'm sitting where there are robots serving.
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
I have seen in
we need to go to
in
Ahmedabad now.
Right, that number one. Number two, I don't know, and I'm sure I did get a deep glimpse of the audience here, and most of you seem to be South Asians. You all would have followed IPL this year. You all saw something called Champak, which was the 4-legged artificial robotic dog going around the grounds there. It was for two reasons. One, of course, it was a test for indigenous cameras that could be deployed in not just cricket fields, but also in other setups as well. But also, interestingly, it was to intrigue the populace that there could be something of this sort that could be going around on the streets of India. So this was, in a way, to teach the population that there are going to be indigenous things coming on your streets as well. Coming back to the point on skills, the skills are not only from the AI model developers point of view, but also from the user point of view as well. So for example, India has tied up with OpenAI, wherein they are now training millions of school teachers to be trained on 1 million, to be more precise, school teachers and not-for-profit workers to essentially use Gen AI tools. So what's happening is we're not just developing skills on the tech side of things, we're also now developing skills on the user side of things as well. So this is happening. There is a systematic step being taken on this, both by a government point of view or also a government and business partnership point of view as well.
Just want to add one thing in there very quickly, right, on the, let's say, awareness of the users perspective. So we were talking about UPI, right? Penetration is not that huge. One thing is language. So what NPCI launched, I think in 2023, Param may know the exact time, they call it Hello UPI, because majority of the people cannot type, right? So then you can actually do financial transaction by just talking in your, I don't think they cover all the 22 languages now. So there, the user is using AI, but they don't care what is behind the scenes, right?
Okay, we've got a few more questions, maybe here and then at the back.
Thanks for a very insightful conversation so far. So we started talking a little bit about the role that agents are going to start playing in some of the sectors. With time, as these agents and automation in general becomes more embedded in sectors and industries, what are your thoughts on the impact of workforce of those industries, especially in a market like India, where some sectors still are very manpower intensive and the cost of labor is still relatively quite cheap? Where do you see the impact in India for that?
Okay. Just before I answer the question, I'm looking at Subhash in terms of time. Do we take all questions together or how much?
I said you should take all questions.
All together. So maybe we can get the question also then?
Yeah. Hi.
So we need to remember the questions now.
Yeah.
My name is Rajiv Chakravarti. I am a freelance data management consultant within financial services out here. I have a couple of questions. First one is, we didn't talk about AI governance, and AI is a double-edged sword. So considering that, do we need laws like we have in European AI Act? And I think that's something which we need to address. I guess the second question is, to ask, India cannot embrace AI, in everything, because India has a huge 1.4 billion population, and hence India needs to embrace AI in a judicious manner. Taking that, how do you think AI will, and one of India's biggest problem is employment generation right now. How do you think AI will address that?
Okay. Okay, there's one more question. Aparam, we'll need to remember all the questions.
I've got answers to the first two.
Okay.
So I'm Arun Roy. Like how we are just talking about how large language models are working and all. Apparently, what I believe is eventually down the line in future, large language model is going to get replaced by small language model, and we will have AI system which is catered to particular tasks. And instead of running on extreme compute, it's going to run on your local hardware, just like your mobile phone or even microprocessors and all. But that's all one thing of the development. My question is, what's the bottleneck when it comes to implementation in India? Because developing is one thing, making policies is one thing, implementing is something different. Like we allocate billions of funds, but only like thousands are reached to the people, something like this.
Okay. I know, Param, you want to go for the governance one first? Do you want to do that?
I can go for the governance or the jobs thing as well.
So pick and choose,
I
pick
think
and choose.
my one-line answer on AI and job losses. AI's value for India isn't in replacing jobs. It's in scaling public services, amplifying local knowledge, and democratizing access. That's what my take is when it comes to the value of AI for India and jobs. On balancing AI innovation and regulations, I think India is taking a principle-first, sector-specific, risk-based approach for AI regulation. It is allowing innovation to thrive while creating frameworks for trust and accountability. The key points that we need to understand is what does METI and Gautam did touch upon the department responsible for this. What it is doing is it is saying enable first, regulate smarter, right? What they're trying to do is they're supporting innovation through soft touch regulations, and then of course with the responsible AI framework. So that's exactly where we are heading on the regulatory part of it as well. I did mention about the AI Safety Institute earlier. It's a test bed for safe AI deployment, aligned with global standards like the UNESCO and others as well. The sectoral framework, someone did ask about the sectoral piece as well. I think tailored rule for domains like healthcare, finance, law enforcement would be required, and I think we are working on it as well here back in India. And most importantly, we would need a lot of public-private collaboration going on this one. Someone did ask about the gaps or the bottlenecks. I think there are a few, but I think when it comes to technology and the bottlenecks, I think I'll leave it for my fellow panelists to talk.
I'll come back to the, I think your question was specifically on agents and job loss, right? And for India, it's contextual because I don't know if that's what you meant, especially in the, let's say, software industry, right? So agents, when they start to write code, what will the software engineers do, right? That's a pertinent question. Will there be job loss? If I have to answer in one word, yes, there will be job loss, right? There is no doubt about that. Let's not get blinded, right? Because there are two things. One is using a co-pilot, which is helping you to create better code and become more efficient. The other thing is not co-pilot, it's the pilot itself, right? Writing code, and then why do you need that human and using a co-pilot? So that will happen. Having said that, it's more probably a job transition. There are more, kind of job profiles getting added for the agentic AI world, right? So the models need to be maintained, there needs to be quality control, etc. Yeah, you can say that at some point there will be agents coming in there as well. But there is always, and that's what has happened. So, when I started my journey as a software engineer, I was using AS400 in a cold room and typing. Then IDE came in and said, oh, you will not need these many engineers because, now the IDEs are more efficient. But that didn't happen, right? Now it's slightly different because the agents will be doing many things. But I feel that there will be other jobs that will be created for those. So the industry needs to then transform. Will that be one-to-one? I don't know, and I don't think so, right? That's what I think. Your question, I'll touch upon that on...
Thank you, that's a hard one though.
So, I think again here the uniqueness of India needs to be considered, right? Whether it is small language model, large language model. So here we are talking a lot on, let's say, Edge AI, right? So that we create a model which can run on the processor, which can run on that. I don't think that will be applicable for India in majority of the cases, right? For various reasons. Because those let's consider in India, majority of the digital services are consumed through mobile only. Majority of the population in India has used internet through only mobile devices and through the mobile internet, right? That's a reality there. But that has worked for India, right? And that's a reality that will stay even when AI becomes part of the entire, let's say, digital ecosystem, right? Having said that, majority of those devices are not even smartphones, they're feature phones. They have got very limited processing, memory, you name it, right? So in that case, it may or may not work if you rely on whatever model you create, whether it's in language or any predictive AI or any agents. You cannot rely on those devices to run it, right? And that's a reality. And that's exactly what many of the implementations are doing. Hello UPI talked about, right? They considered that. So they could have used a model. Okay, let's create a small language model, micro language model, whatever you name it, and then every device, so the UPI application will basically deploy it on the device and use it. They didn't do it because majority of the devices cannot do it, and you cannot rely on that. So then you will have to design that entire ecosystem based on that reality, right? Which is probably unique to, not just unique to India. I'm sure many other regions like Sub-Saharan Africa, where the devices are not all iPhones or even smartphones, right?
So very briefly, I'd also like to tackle those two questions very briefly. One is, I don't like to do panels where I agree with every time with my panelists. I'll disagree with your answer. So I would say no, that I don't think it would lead to job losses, primarily because of the fact that it would lead to increased efficiency. And if you look at some of the use cases, and I'm looking at my colleague from Google here, I have heard Sundar Pichai saying that a bulk of the code right now, maybe over 50% of the code is done by agents, and then the coder checks the code on top of that. So I'm looking at agentic AI being more of an improved efficiency. If you take a use case of the Indian judicial system, it's broken right now, and there are startups and ventures that are looking at use of AI to actually help with the Indian judicial system. So I do not believe agentic AI and the use of agentic AI will lead to job. Right, it would lead to improved efficiency for the agents that we create and the people who are using the agents. So I don't see them replacing people. You see them as improving efficiency of people who are using the agentic AI aspect. To your question, I am a big believer of that we need to move away from domain agnostic regulation. The EU AI Act is a perfect example of a domain agnostic regulation, which makes it so high level that it's right in its true sense, but it's not very useful for me at an engineering perspective. So in all my conversations with the regulators and both at the UN level and also at the UK government level, we are asking for, it's okay to have a domain sector cross-cutting regulation like the EU AI Act, but you need to have a sector-specific regulation. So transport-specific regulation for AI, healthcare-specific regulation for AI, because the specificities are very, very different when it comes to sector-specific. So I believe India also needs to take an approach like that. Param mentioned a bit about that, about AI Safety Institute in India. In the UK also we've got an AI Security Institute, but it used to be AI Safety Institute. So there's a bit of collaboration that I think hopefully through the FTA that can be fostered. Happy to take a conversation offline also. I see you nodding your head in disagreement, so we can take that offline. Thank you so much. Over to you, Subhash.
Just to conclude on the point you made about regulation, India's approach is about building trust without stifling talent. That's exactly what we're doing, and that's how the startups are flourishing. Regulations, we believe, are required, but they must be enabling and not disabling. That's exactly a conversation that I had with the Mighty Secretary 2 weeks back when I was in his office, and I was raising this whole question about regulation, and this is exactly the answer that you said. And when your policymaker talks in a language like this, it's much more encouraging for us to then, as practitioners, go back to the world and start working on it. Yeah. Thank you.
Anyway, 6 months back when I was thinking of doing this topic, stretching over for 2 chapters, I was given to understand this is something which is not going to be a successful one. Having been part of the first chapter last week and today, I can see the amount of content, amount of information, amount of knowledge, and the kind of engagement that we created over the 2 chapters. It just definitely makes me believe that 1.6 billion people have a lot of stories to share. And I think the next time we come back on Tech Tuesdays on a similar kind of a topic, we should probably go beyond 2 or 3 chapters, that's for sure. But first of all, thanks to the panel members. Of course, thanks to Param for being up so late in the morning, so late at night, and for reasons more than one. Thanks a lot. Thanks to Gautam. Thanks to Siddharth for being here, for sharing and being part of this journey. Before I really sort of take a few more minutes in terms of, and I don't want to be an impediment between your drinks and food and everything else, it's imperative that I invite the person who's paying or have been paying for our food and drinks. So Rakshit from HCL Tech. Rakshit, you there?
Hi, sorry, I'm not paying, HCL Tech is paying.
Okay, sure. Okay. HCL is paying, of course.
I'm only facilitating, yes. Hi.
Hi.
So yeah, I was supposed to be there in person. Sorry, my wife is traveling and I'm doing daddy duties at home today, so missing the session. But I've enjoyed the session thoroughly, Siddharth, Param, and Gautam. I joined actually at 6 p.m. and waited half an hour for the session to start. So yeah, I felt the pain of joining this online. So great. So look, on a personal level, I've been associated with Tech Tuesdays right from the inception. Terrific knowledge platform. And the message that I would like to convey today is that HCL Tech is really proud to support Tech Tuesdays Xxtra July sessions. And keeping it short, I hope you enjoyed today's session, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the evening as well. And hope to see you guys next time. Thanks so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rakshit. Thank you. So yeah, so as per the process, please stay back for after this episode ends. We're going to invite some of you to take your bites. A bit of information with regards to the next one. Tech Tuesdays is back in the month of September. We're taking a break in August. We're going to be back on the 2nd of September at Reed Smith, Liverpool Street, with the topic AI and financial inclusion. You must have seen that on the display. On the 9th of September, we're organizing Tech Tuesdays UK Mixer in partnership with GSMA Innovation Foundry at the bank office. And to know more about our episodes, today's episode, as for the forthcoming ones, please follow us on LinkedIn, WhatsApp, and other digital touchpoints. Thank you. Thanks to each one of you once again for being here. Enjoy the evening, have the food, have some drinks, and just be calm. Thank you. Bye-bye.